let's start, shall we? So in edit mode, I will slide some vertices just around the thrusters to kind of get back our circular shape. I will also need to move the ones on top. Basically, I'm just trying to restore our kind of perfect cylinder that we had in the beginning. Now what I'm gonna do also is select the tip of the thruster, all the circle, and then setting my pivot point to bounding box center, I will extrude it and scale it down just a bit. That way when we connect the thruster to the rest of the fuselage, we still have a bit of room to play with, and it's not just a single vertex. Now I'll select this vertex here and this one, and add a loop cut in the center, just so I can create two faces, two quads. Now selecting those two quads, I will inset them and pressing B to not have faces on this side. That way I can fill in this face right here, just so we have a loop that follows this side. I will slide this vertex here and do the same for this one. Just like that to kind of move it away from the thruster. Now I'll add a loop cut here just so I can fill this face right here. And now we need to think about how we're going to connect those. And I'll move this one closer to the center line to give us a bit of room to play with. I'll deselect the ones close to the front and move the tip further on the center line. Now I'll just move those once again to make this a bit flatter and slide this one slightly. Okay, now what we will need to do is select the vertex kind of on this fin part. Actually, let's slide them a bit more just so they match the one on the thruster. And then I will do a merge at last. Well, not now, sorry. I want to connect those two before. And now you can see that if we make a quad here, it's going to look pretty junky, and to fix that I will move the fin closer to the mirror axis. Just so it's a bit flatter and it's not like going inward. Now I'll select this face, this vertex, my bad. Let's slide this one at the tip closer to the center. Add a loop cut on this edge and move it up. And do the same for the vertex next to it. Actually, let's do it for 3 of them, and I will remove the vertex that we added just before. I'll slide this one here just to make it a bit cleaner. And this is a bit of a tricky part. So I'll try to just create a face here. And we'll see what it looks like. Actually, let's undo that. It's not a good idea. Now I'll select the thruster vertex and this one on the tip here, and connect them together and add a loop cut in the center. and then we can create this face here. Now, for now it doesn't look pretty because it's not connected to the rest, but I'm hoping that once it is, it will create this section that will look pretty okay and not too bad. I'll just move those to kind of get a bit more of a circular shape. And then add loop cut on the thruster and move it outward to restore the circular shape. And slide the one on top. And now I will fill this area with 2 quads. Just like this. And don't worry too much about this kind of... actually, maybe we need to worry. If it's not visible from the outside, I'm not going to preoccupy too much with it, especially since the thrusters will be kind of have a double layer to them once we're done. Now I'll select this loop, and actually let's just slide this one here because it was not used before. Now I'll select this vertex on the thruster and slide it, and do the same for this other one before we can create this new face. Now I will add a loop cut to the face we just created and move it up just a tiny bit. Then I will fill in the face on the thruster side, then on the fin side, and complete with another face right here. Now I'm gonna undo those and do it on the other direction, just to see if it looks cleaner. And now this area may need to be reworked, but I'll just check if we can fix it by just sliding some vertices. Now it's not a very visible area, so it's not a big issue if we leave it like this, for now at least. I'll just see if it looks better if I connect the center vertex of this quad to the tip to create 2 triangles. Now here I'm going to slide it upward just a bit and do the same for this one in the center. Okay, let's continue. I will delete those 2 triangles that we created earlier and the face next to it. I will do the same for this one as well. And then we'll go on the other underside of the plane. Select this vertex, move it up just a bit, and then create a quad here, connect those 2 vertex. I'll just slide that to make it a bit more straight. Then I will add a loop cut and move it up, like so, and then I can create 2 quads with this. Now we may need to add a bit more geometry just so we can create just quads on this, but I will fill this face here on the thruster side and then move this vertex up to kind of create this this crease. And then I'll add a loop cut. Just that way we can create 2 quads and 1 triangle instead of 1 quad and 2 triangles. Let's see how it looks. Now I'll select the tip, all the vertices here on this loop, and delete them. I want to get closer to the cross sections, and to do that I will slide those 3 vertices back and do the same for this one. Now I'll select those 3 vertices and extrude them on the x-axis until they clip with the mirror. That way we don't bring all of those vertices towards the whole length of the plane. We kind of enclose them in this small area. And this will allow us to have a much more manageable amount of vertices. Now I will add a loop cut on the center of the fuselage, create this face here, like so, and then add a loop cut, sorry, I didn't do it in the right order. And add another one in the center to kind of match the number that we have over there. And then I will move the 2 center vertices up, just so we can create a new face with that. I'll move them up just a bit more. Add a loop cut next to them as well, and fill in this face here and this one as well. Actually, let's delete that face first and fill in the one next to it instead, because I'm not too sure where I want the curve to stop. So I'll delete the face we created as well, slide this one here so it's closer to the front, and then we can create these 2 faces. I kind of created another loop that goes around this enclosure we made before. Now I'll select those 2 vertices and move them up, and select only the center one and do the same, because you could see that it was a bit flat, and whenever you see that your surface has kind of a bump where it shouldn't be, you should move some vertices to try to take care of this problem and recreate the surface that you wanted. So I'll select all of those vertices and slide them upward to kind of round this corner. And then selecting those vertices, I'll slide them towards the back to make the shape smoother. And do the same with these, but towards the front, to again smooth out this area. And you can see how we kind of neutralized all of those vertices by redirecting them towards the center axis and using them in a useful way instead of just throwing them towards the front of the plane and dealing with them later. So I'll just continue sliding some vertices, trying to get the shape that I want. And this is a pretty good start. It's quite nice. Now I'll select all of those vertices and slide them toward the back. Just trying to get back the shape of the blueprint that we kind of lost before. Now I'll continue tweaking this thruster area. If yours look good, you don't need to do that. I'm just not happy with how mine looks, so I'm going to fix those because it's pretty easy and you can only fix the surface in the beginning. Actually, you can do it later, but the more you wait, the more complicated it gets. So here you will need the Loop Tools add-on, but I'm pretty sure it was enabled already for you. But I will select the vertices here, and we're going to try to get perfect curvature on this dorsal fin. So I'll try. And this is an issue, and to fix that, now follow attentively, I'll select all of those faces and separate them. Now, once they're a separate object, I'll select the end loops and the middle one, and then I will press curve. And this will bend them perfectly between them. But make sure you only select the loops you want. Then I will merge the object back into the plane and merge by distance. Now you want to select your vertices and merge them at last. and that's all. But we will need to do it for the whole length of this dorsal fin, basically. Now we only did it for a small segment, but we can do it for the whole, this whole section instead. So I'll just select those and move them up just a bit, because you could see that the surface was kind of dipping at this area where it shouldn't be. It should stay straight. Okay, perfect. Now for this dorsal area that I was talking about, let's select all of the faces, but not the triangular ones. Okay, so deselect those. And then we will create a new object with them. So right click, separate selection. And then I'm going to select the loop at the end. Actually, we want to position the center loops exactly where we want them. So I'll select the one at the end here. Actually, let's select this one instead. And then 1, 2, and 3. Only 2 at the center. And then I will press curve. And you can see that it kind of made everything smoother. And now we will merge it back with the rest of the plane. And then we're going to select the fuselage vertex and merge it with the dorsal fin. And you can do merge by distance, just to be sure. So always merge, select the fuselage first and merge at last. Now I'm going to slide this one to kind of just bending my own rule here. And merge at last. Now once that is done, here you can see it spaced them out quite a bit. So to fix that, I'll just slide this one here. Do the same for this one and all the rest. But you will see that we're gonna get a much smoother curve, because this tool will basically take everything and calculate kind of the, maybe not the Bezier, but the perfect tangent between all of those loops. And you can see that we get pretty much perfect result. Now let's finish this area. So I'll add the loop cut on the bottom of the wing to match the number that we have on the fuselage. Then dissolve this loop just so I can create this face more easily before adding that loop back. I'll add it back, like I said, and then create this face here, and we'll need to think about how are we going to merge the wing to the thruster. Now I'll slide this one closer to the center and keep thinking about how we're going to proceed with this. Now for the front, this is pretty easy. We just add a loop in the center and one higher up and fill in this space. We'll need to add 2 loop cuts to the bottom, and let me just slide this backward. So I'll add them right where they meet the one on the wing, and then fill those faces like so. And actually we'll need to add a loop probably right under the wing to kind of continue this protective loop that we created before. Or what we could do is actually just move them up a little bit. And yeah, let's see where this loop goes, and it's going straight here, so no problem. We'll add the loop and finish our protective loop around the whole wing, like this. Pretty nice. So now you can really see that the plane is starting to come together. And now don't worry, this is the hardest part. After that, it's only adding details, and it's just fun part. Now let's finish connecting the intake area. So to do that, we'll just check if we have the same number of loop cuts on both sides. And here, yeah, because we did our job correctly, and we can just fill this area pretty easily. Now for the bottom, it might be a bit harder, but I will start by spacing our loops apart and create this new face, and continue spacing them just a bit more to kind of even out the geometry density once it's subdivided. I'll do the same for this center loop here, and create this face. Actually, let's remove that face, because we may need a kind of protective loop, and for now, I don't really want to do that. Now you can see that our loop here goes in the center, and we'll need to add another one. So I'll delete those two faces and dissolve the loop that ran across the center of this rudder. And now we can create our face, and you can see that we will need some more loops coming from the front. So I'll select the vertices here that were kind of the underside of the cockpit, and then extrude them inside view. I don't care if they collapse with the fuselage for now, and I'll move them right about here. And then I will select the corner vertex and delete it, just so we get those three, and slide the one on the side further back, and delete those two faces. That way we can connect them. And if you have that, just flip your normals using Shift N. Okay, now we can create this face and add a loop here. That will be our protective loop. And create, actually, let's add loop cut at the end here to connect it to the rudder. Add 2 just to match this area. Then we can select this edge and fill it. And now we're gonna have a pretty weird surface, so we may need to tweak it a little bit. And just slide this one down and see how this looks. Now this is not great. Maybe by sliding this one further up, we can resolve the issue. I'll select this edge and do the same, slide it towards the side. And move this one. Now this is already looking much better and much closer to what I could imagine being under this plane. Now I will need to bevel those two edges, not manually of course, but with the edge weight. like so. And let's see if we can get rid of this artifact by beveling those edges. And I don't think this is going to be a good solution in the long run to bevel this whole loop, but it would be a possible solution. Especially since there are no big parts that are angled or no change in direction. But let's add a loop in the center. Actually, let's not do that. Now I want to just slide this one instead. Slide it closer. And we can take care of this problem later on. I'll just restore the curvature over there. Now for the top. Since we got rid of this loop in the center, we're gonna run into an issue and need to kind of rethink of how we filled this area. I'll delete those two vertices, sorry, and all of those faces as well, because my surfaces were pretty bumpy. So I'll select the vertices. Actually, let's delete all of this dorsal area, except the ones connecting to the thruster. Now I'll select the edges over here and connect them directly to the wings. That way we're sure that they're going to be straight, and I can add two loops here and just refill this area. Since we moved a lot of the vertices manually before, we kind of had this very bumpy surface, and it would have been hard to get it back together. So by just removing the faces and recreating new ones, we get a much cleaner surface. And we can do it even more because you can see it's still pretty bumpy in this area. But this might just be our intake that goes up too much. So to fix that, I'll delete, actually maybe not delete for now, but I'll just move them up a little bit. Okay, Blender crashed, so here's what we're gonna do. Let's select those vertices at the bottom, extrude them in side view, and then move them up. So I extrude them twice, if you didn't see. Now we're gonna connect them to the nose of our plane. Actually, let's connect them like that, and add a loop cut if needed. And don't worry about the shape of the circle for now, we will fix that. Now I'll delete the vertices here that were originally our curve network. And now we're gonna fill the rudder. So be attentive here because it's gonna be hard for you to see. But I'm gonna select those two faces, basically select any two faces that align, and then fill them as far as you can without touching the tip. And I will do the same for this one. If you didn't see, watch again. Here I just canceled this one because it's going to meet with this intake, and I'm not sure where I want to use that. So I'll add a loop on the bottom of the fuselage here, to kind of match the one that we have on the rudder. Then I will turn off my mirror just so we can see better what's going on. Now let's delete those two faces that we created earlier and add 2 loops just towards them, like so. And then I'm going to create this face between the fuselage and the rudder. And now you can see if you have this issue and flipping normals doesn't work, it's because it's not gonna work. It's a geometry issue that your mesh is probably just like, not sure how to explain it, but your mesh is not going to be good. So let's just start by filling the bottom here, the part that was kind of below the fuselage. Sometimes when you don't know where to start, it's better to spot the easiest area and work with that first. So I'll add a loop here on top and fill those faces, because I can see that these will for sure be connected. I'll just move this vertex a lot more outwards, just so the face becomes a bit flatter. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe. But for now, we'll roll with it. Let's move this one to kind of get a cleaner cockpit shape. Okay. So let's select our edge of this face, and what happens if we try to fit it is it doesn't really know where to go, and basically we should, at some point it will merge at the top and at the bottom. At the bottom it's already merged, so it's not an issue. Now we just need to figure out how we're going to deal with the top. And so what I want to do is connect the top of the rudder to the fuselage here. That way we know for sure where they will merge together. Now I'll straighten those vertices using G-stretch. And now those vertices, with my pivot set to active element, I will rotate them just a smidge. Okay, let's delete this face here, add loop towards there, and then fill in this area. Now fill this like this, even though there's a triangle for now. Now, what I want to do is select this loop here and make sure that it's beveled the whole length to kind of keep it sharp when we fill this area. Now I selected the edge on the fuselage, and you can see that it's merging sooner at the bottom than at the top. And this is what my brain is trying to figure out, like, how do we deal with this? So I'll delete those faces at the bottom, and I think we're gonna move the merging point further back. So I'll create new faces from this edge on the fuselage. And then merge at last. So one vertex before the spot we planned earlier. So now we still have to fix the bottom. So I'm adding loops here to fill the tip. So you may need to add a few. Here I'm adding 3 at the bottom and 2 at the top if I'm not wrong. But basically you just want to have quads the whole way. So add as many as you need. And let's connect those two together. And now I'm adding 2 loops here and turning off auto merge vertices. That way, if our vertices get too close, they don't merge by accident. And this can be pretty annoying when this happens. Now this part, I must admit, is very confusing for you. It must be at least pretty confusing for you to watch. So I'm sorry for that. And it was confusing enough for me, so I can't imagine how it is for you. So I'm selecting those 2 edges and recreating the faces that we had. Actually, let's select this one. There, and now we can create that. I didn't delete the faces of the fuselage, I just hid them using H. That way we see a bit more what's going on. And then I'll select those 2, and you can see that the black spot is because there's a face here that's been created with the fuselage. It just wasn't visible. So I'll add 2 loops on the fuselage here, and we'll need to add 2 at the bottom as well. We may need to add the 3rd one. Let's just give us a bit of space. By moving those inward to make the rudder a bit thinner. Just make sure your rudder doesn't touch your fuselage before that point. And I will just fill in this area, the whole length of. And yeah, this spot is pretty much done. We may need to do a few tweaks, but from now on it's going to be much easier for you to follow, because all the tough areas are done. So if you made it through, good job. Now you can see that the plane is really starting to look really nice. Now let's connect our nose to this part here. And so I will do a G stretch and make sure to spread evenly instead of just spread. I'll just select this loop here and do a G stretch as well. And slide this one here to move it further apart, and so it's not as dense. Same for here, and same for this one. Just make sure that it doesn't cause any issues because it's beveled. At least for now it is. I think we can find a better solution. So let's remove the bevel and add a loop and move it. Actually, let's not take care of this for now. We may need to rework that. So I just added a loop instead of the bevel. Okay, so those two faces will for sure be connected. So let's do that. Now the other ones will be a bit tougher to see where they go and what the optimal edge flow is. So just save, make a backup if needed, and then we'll start. So I'll select this vertex here, add a loop on the face we just created, and I will need to kind of bend our fuselage here. Now I'll delete those two faces, select all of those vertices here, but not the one at the top. Actually, let's already move them out to get a bit more of a rounded fuselage. Then I'll select them and extrude them on the y-axis, rotate them just to kind of make the tip straighter, and then we can create this face. Now those two, I'll move them again on the x-axis, making sure that the center ones are the most curved to kind of match this circle, because we basically have a rectangle that we need to turn into a circle. So I'll add a loop on this face here that we can connect. Actually, let's add the loop first. And then these vertices, can rotate them to kind of move them down, because I want to create a new row of faces, but on top. So I'll just select those vertices, those 4 vertices, and extrude them on the x-axis, just a little bit. And then I will rotate them, making sure my pivot is set to active element, and that the last vertices I had selected was the one further back. So I'll select the 2 top vertices, extrude them right here towards the windshield. I'm just deleting this vertex here and kind of remaking the shape that we wanted and connecting it. That way we kind of have a loop that will follow the shape of our cockpit and kind of protect it if we need to add more geometry. Now I will add 1 loop here on the side and create this new face and do the same here. And now this will need to be slid outward. And let's move that further back to give us a bit more room to merge it into a cylinder. Now let's connect that, making sure that we have the same number of loops on both sides, add if needed. But in this case, I will prefer to add loops on the nose side instead of on the cockpit. Now you can see it's very bloated, so we will need to fix that because we don't want our plane to end up like looking like this. So I'll just select this loop here. This is the point where it will become a perfect circle. So I'll just delete it, delete all the other ones, sorry, and then we'll duplicate our mirror modifier, disable the visibility of one of them, and apply the other. Now I want to select the whole loop, set my pivot to bounding box, then loop tool, circle. That way we are sure that we have a perfect circle. So we'll scale it down just to match the blueprint, and I'm only scaling it on the x-axis as you can see. And now I'm gonna scale it on the z-axis to match the blueprint once again. And then extrude, scale down. And the fact that we apply the mirror in this case will help us not only to make the loop to circle function, but also when we scale it down, it's going to scale more evenly instead of just clipping through the mirror axis. So I'm just extruding and scaling down each time to get this shape. And now we'll still need to rework this area, and so I'll make this wider. If needed, you can dissolve loops or slide them around. This can often help to get smoother shapes. The last thing I want to do is turn back on the visibility of our mirror, and to do that we will need to delete 1/2 of the plane in edit mode. So I'll just do that quickly in the front view and being in wireframe. And zoom in just to make sure that we didn't delete our center vertices. And turn it back on. And that's it for this episode. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.